yours.
First of all, I must check how this works. Okay. So, hello and welcome to our talk. Now we drop down from the top floor to the shop floor, from the world of quantum physics to the macroscopic world of manufacturing. Our topic of today is real-time root cause analysis in production. My name is Bernd Maar, and that's exactly my job at BMW in our new plant in Debrecen. Next year we start producing our new class of electrical vehicles there, so stay tuned. And with me is Lukas Unterschütz. Lukas is a data scientist at Robotron in Dresden, and he's also an outstanding Splunk developer. So last year we started to develop a comprehensive framework on Splunk, which exactly supports these purposes, real-time analysis in production. So to explain it in simple terms, what we would like to achieve is a real-time framework for scrap and rework, where you can act immediately, where we narrow down the causes as fast as possible. And with that, we have two requirements on this platform. First, real-time data. So no more delays than 10 seconds after the production line. And second, the most important one is every tool we developed for slicing and dicing and doing analytical stuff must be simple enough that it supports collaboration between engineers and analysts, operators and analysts. That's really the most crucial thing in that. And to explain it in more detail, we prepared an example. First. So, a very long presentation. So, the example comes from the electrical engine production. So that's an engine, and we are focusing only on this part, the rotor. So we are used to build rotors in about 30 steps. And on the next slide, so jetzt muss ich mal blättern, Moment. Jetzt haben wir leider Animation. So. So, on this slide, I outlined the most important steps. From left to the right, we start with the iron core, which has been isolated before we wind up the copper wires. Then the connectors are mounted, and everything is packed into a case out of different parts from different materials. And at a later step, at a later step, everything is filled with adhesive. That's the reason for that is when it is hardened, it makes the whole thing to a solid unit. And then it's better resistible for mechanical stresses. And exactly in this final step, something can go wrong sometimes. And for example, the fluid can leak out of the case, or it forms bubbles. And some of these issues could be repaired and others cannot, and then scrap is produced. The rotor is completely lost. So, of course, every single step, and the others too, we have under control. We have control limits for all these parameters. But what always can happen is the combination of these things can cause issues. And we do not have any analytical relationship between this, how they are influencing the overall result. But what helps us here is AI, let's say visual analytics and statistics. And how this works exactly, Lukas will show you now. So, Luke, it's your turn.
Okay. Thank you, Bernd. All right. So, since we brought a use case from data-driven root cause analysis, we also want to highlight that the framework we are working on isn't limited to this use case, but it's rather a generic solution. So in the beginning of root cause analysis, there's always a problem. And for that case, it doesn't matter much in which domain the problem arises from. It can be the chemical industry. It can be, as we've seen, the car production or the financial sector. It could even be the food industry. But there is an issue that can't be solved by traditional means from the domain experts, right? But all of these domains have in common is that they are really complex and that there's a lot of know-how from all the experts. And yet, they have to hand it over to some analysts who are on the solution side. They get some data, play around with it, and come up with some solutions. And these solutions need to be proficient, otherwise they will not be used, there will be no trust, and they will not be applied. And often we have issues that we have a big latency between what the expert sees and what the analyst gets, and often we even have a lack of explanation of the data for the analyst. And this often leads to projects where the progress isn't measured in like hours or days, but often in weeks or months, and they take a long time to converge, and it's quite comparable to the growth of a tree. So what's the core of these issues? The cartoon on the right gets it to the point. A baker wants to know why his breads are messed up, and so he turns the data, he starts collecting some data, he turns it over to an analyst, and she goes back to the lab, does some analysis, and comes back a month later and says, well, your oven shouldn't be heated up above 4,000 degrees, which is really not that helpful for the baker. But you'd be surprised how many examples there are where exactly this problem happens. So what's the issue? Well, there's some cultural friction. Both sides, both the expert and the analyst, are deeply involved in their own subject matters, and they have some wide experience, the domain expert in this domain and the analysts in terms of data science. But they do have very different terminology, so they don't talk the same language, they are not really able to communicate well. Furthermore, we have technical friction, especially in big companies with workflows that's been building up for many, many years. There's a lot of different technologies and different softwares that are used, which are not useful for rapid development and for quick experimentation, which is at the core of finding solutions quickly. All right, so what do we propose? What is needed? We need to get the best out of both worlds, both from the expertise of the data analysis and of the expertise of the domain. And this is why we created a real-time framework where the expert and the analyst can cooperatively find error patterns in the data. So let's get into it. It basically composes of 4 steps, and I will show the dashboards that we're working on in the next slides. Okay, so we start out on a dashboard where we want to collect some features that are influential for distinguishing between good and bad parts, between sick and healthy patients, or between rotors that need to be reworked and that can't be reworked anymore. And here you can see an intuitive layout of the line that you probably recognized from Bernd's slide earlier, and where the domain expert can see his line, he can go through the stations, select the measurements that are done, which he thinks might be the most influential, and we have some little data analysis built in so that it can be an interactive process. In the next step, we leverage machine learning and AI to find features that might be influential from a point of statistics. So we basically have some features that might be interesting just from the knowledge that's built in the domain, but other features might fly under the radar and may only be interesting in combinations with others, but we are able to catch them here. So now, after we've built a portfolio of different features in the first 2 steps, we are able to interactively analyze our data. We basically mainly do this in our parallel coordinates diagram, where each of the line corresponds to one of the features that we've selected in the previous steps, and each of the lines flowing through the diagram corresponds to a single rotor or bread or whatever piece is being produced, and we are able to distinguish the good from the bad ones by the color. So now we're looking for value ranges. We're looking for a too high temperature, too low pressure, too much weight, too low heat or something, and we try. And it would be easy if it was just one feature, but we need to find the interaction in a multivariate analysis. And here, both the expert and the data analysts can play around together and look at some KPIs. In this example, we found a filter that works on 80% precision. So that means for every 10 rotors we take out of the line, 8 of them would actually have been defective, and 2 of them were ones that turned out good, which is quite nice. So we save a lot of money in the rework. On the right-hand side, you can see another visualization that we use, which is basically a histogram showing value ranges in green that might be problematic and turn out to produce many defective parts. So far, so good. We found some new insight into our data. We just have to get the data into Splunk, and then we can start analyzing it right off the bat. But now we want to turn it into action. And for this, we have to see if the filter found something that was a once-off occurrence, or if it's something, it found a pattern that's been going on for quite a lot of time. And we can do this in our last step, where we can see the volume and the quality that the filter was able to distinguish between good and defective parts. And then, if we arrive at that, we can apply it right into production by defining a rule. And every time a rotor or a bread or whatever for that matter is found in the production line and is measured at the specific values, the line worker will be alerted, and they can then be given a rule what to do. And in our specific rotor case, we had an issue of production disturbances that led the rotor to cool down too much before being filled with a vacuum. And we were able to fix this really quickly, and were able to reduce the scrap in a big way. All right, I'll give it back to you, Bernd, to finish the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's get to the point. How do we benefit so far? First of all, what you've seen in this short, fast presentation is we have a framework, a comprehensive framework from the data definition, from the cleaning, from AI intervention, which is suitable for collaborations. That is proven. And we speed up the solution process in production, or the recommendation process in production, very fast. It's really good. That's a big point in this. It makes it to a success story because now we can act directly on the information. That's the reason why we need real-time data, 10 seconds. We need this information at the place where it is relevant, where someone can act on it. It's not possible to remove all the issues from our assembly line, but some are really captured with this. And all together. And now, of course, with everything new type of problem, we are challenged to build new technology, new interaction, new tool sets based on mostly on AI. But what we have to do is use AI to cover the complexity of AI. At the end, nobody who wants to use AI must understand everything, and that's a big challenge on this. And now we are working on the example you've seen was very easy, was a very simple one. In real world, the error pattern are much more difficult. You have to treat with time series, with combination. You need a much different multivariate analysis for that. But I'm sure we are here on the right track doing this. And it is used at the moment, as we start producing next year, early next year, and we will use it for the battery production right from the beginning. So now I'm at the end of our talk. I hope you enjoy, and thank you for your patience.